Hello, Sri Swami Svatmananda. Did I do that right?
Absolutely. I'm impressed.
No.
I'm
Oh,
really impressed.
that's
Wow.
rare.
And it just rolled, you just had it rolling.
Silver-tongued
That's
fool.
awesome.
Emphasis on fool. But anyway, yeah, it's been a long time. I've
It
missed you.
has.
You have been very busy in Europe, uh,
Yeah.
teaching, mentoring. What have you been doing? Having fun?
All of the above.
Awesome. Very good. Well,
All of the above, yeah.
that's awesome. I just got back from Europe too. We had a great time. We try to go every couple of years because um, we usually spend a lot of time seeing my husband's family. But right before I signed on to you, I grabbed into my microscope box, a big old box that has my laboratory microscope, and something sharp is
Oh,
now
no.
in my. But I don't have time to get it out, so I got to get my loops and some tweezers, chainsaw, I don't know, something like that. But no worries, because we are going to talk about something that everybody is fascinated in, and that is reincarnation. I
Right.
actually, before I even knew anything about spirituality, when I was still like an agnostic, way before Erik died, um, the first subject I got interested in was reincarnation. But I still didn't believe, totally about mediums or any of the other stuff.
Right.
But it was when my little boy, well, at that time, little boy, like he was 3 years, 2, had a really high fever, ended up having pneumonia, and I was holding him. I'd given him a tepid water bath and all that. And he started talking about how he was a little girl in Jamaica, and no little boy is going to say that they were a little girl. I'm telling you that they just don't do that.
Exactly.
And so my eldest was taking notes and stuff, and how she was her mother and father were plantation owners. I know I've told you this story, but whatever. You have to suffer through it again. And they were having a picnic by this waterfall, and Lucas, as the little girl with his pretty dress on, was twirling around and around, singing something. I can't remember the name of it. But then he tripped, or he may have had a seizure. I'm not sure. Fell, and he said he went into the water, and all of a sudden he saw bubbles coming out of his mouth, and then he was in a dark, warm place. And he said that Maria, our housekeeper, was my daddy, and Papa was my mommy. So that was kind of weird.
Right.
So then I got this book by Carol Bowman, Children's Past Lives.
Mm-hmm.
She was sort of evaluating the works of Ian Stevenson, and I got hooked. All the amazing stories, and so the studies were so controlled. Like this kid could never have left this village, and none of the that sort of thing. And the parents cannot really believe in reincarnation, all that stuff. Anyway, your turn.
Okay. Well, actually, that's a great starting point, because one of the things I tell people, and especially if I have friends who have kids, let's say under 7 years old,
Mm-hmm.
I tell them to get your kids to tell stories. See, what happens is kids under 7 years old remember the last life, the very last life.
Mm-hmm.
So, but then they do not know the difference between this life and next life. So it's all blended in. So one of the things, in fact, if I don't have kids myself, but what happens is if I come across a kid who can speak English, and especially if they're between the ages of 2 or 5 years old, I get them to tell me a story. And usually I start, and if they're shy, then I tell them a story, and then they tell me a story. And inevitably, they'll tell you a story of a past life. And I found this like totally fascinating, So sometimes I tell my friends that, I'm going to do this to your kids, and, some parents are not very excited about it. But for the most part, like I was in India when I was studying, the Vedic stuff. There was a kid, actually, he was about 3 years old, born in India. And it was really bizarre thing about this kid is that he looked more American. So he was Indian with like blonde hair, and he had a certain mannerisms. And I found out through his stories that he was actually born in the US. He flew a plane. He died in a plane crash.
Oh.
So it's really fascinating. And not only that, by the way, there's so many medical studies done by, the Western medicine. I think you're probably more familiar with it, where they say that the first sound a baby makes is from the language the baby was accustomed to in the past life. Now, this is a scientific study, and I can't quote right now where exactly it is, but I'm sure if folks want to Google it, they can find out about it.
Well, that's interesting because Easton, my little grandson, he always said the same two words. I can't remember them for the life of me, over and over again. They weren't English words. They weren't, it's just something. And then there's a story of the father who passed the hallway of his twin, I think they were daughters, heard them speaking, and I've told you this before, but in case you guys didn't watch the YouTube, speaking this, what appeared to be a language, not just gobbledygook. And so he decided to record it, take it to a linguistics professor, and said, I don't know. So he sent it to an antiquities linguistic professor. The guy said Aramaic. They're speaking Aramaic. That's cool.
Yeah, exactly. And so I do recommend also for parents to record the baby sounds, especially when they're adolescent, like 1-year-old or 2-year-old, because actually if you record it and then take it to a linguist, they'll tell you what language that person spoke. But I can really assure you this. I've done it every time I come across a child. Is I tell them to tell me stories, and inevitably they'll come out and tell me a story about the past lives. I mean, I'll kind of lead them on initially because they might be a little shy, but it's really fascinating. I mean, how we can actually get our own children to tell us stories of our past lives. The problem is that when we raise them, if they say something stupid, we tell them stop being stupid. Oh, that's nonsense. And so what happens is, unfortunately, by condemning our kids, we're really cutting them off from the past. You know? And if we allowed to nurture that, the kids would actually evolve because they've been accepted by their parents.
So we should do this with every child, you're saying, right?
Pretty much, because every child, and especially children that are born after 2012, these children are completely wired differently than we were. And so they totally know it. They know about past lives. They know about other lives, not only the past life, but they have these sensibilities that can tap into other realms that we today are just, this is sort of like a novelty what you and I are doing. But for them, it will be like a common day language.
Plus, it could be healing if they talk about some of the traumas that may have occurred in those lives.
Absolutely. And it also is a door, an entry point to understand what brings them here. Not only that, by understanding what their traumas are, we understand what's the purpose of this child in this lifetime. There's a connection. And we just, so we really incriminate these children at a young age that by the time they become 6 or 7 years old, they begin to kind of hide it or lose it, and they try to fit in, and that's actually a disservice to them and to the families.
Yeah, I think we need to, you're right, foster it, encourage it, reassure them that what they are talking about is real, and maybe have to help them think of some sort of language in order to talk about this that's appropriate at school. One thing I see is that, you and I talked about imaginary friends, that they could be guests, deceased, not guests, guides, deceased loved ones, but maybe they are, people from, they are just talking about people from their past lives. Maybe they're not there in spirit, but they could. I know that either Christina or Michelle had this friend they called her Riri Coslin. So that's weird. Now Michelle, when Erik was born, knocked on his head and say, "I'm Batman." So I don't think she's Batman though. Somehow I doubt it. But then Annika, my youngest, she had this, she always wanted every horse, plastic, whatever, to be called Milo. So after what happened to Lucas, I got some scripts for past life regression. Laid her down and went through that, going down the steps of these doors, blah, blah, blah. I don't remember. And she talked about how she was in a barn that was on fire and everything came crashing down on Milo and her. And she started crying, and it was real. She was crying in a way that it was real, but then all of a sudden she was fine, and she smiled and said, "Thank you," and skipped off. Same thing happened to Erik. I did the same thing to him, and he was a guy with a wife and 2 kids. I think in Ireland, big cliff. He had a horrible headache, so blinding that he accidentally fell off the cliff and left his family destitute. And he really started sobbing. It was very, real for him.
Yeah, it's also fascinating. Like, for instance, whenever we travel somewhere, we actually go to places we've lived before.
Oh,
so that's one of the reasons why we pick a destination. It's not like, for instance, you say, oh well, if you really think about it, there's so many countries around the world. Why do we pick one particular country or one particular place to go to? And most of the times we end up going to that place. Now, for instance, I'll tell you just a couple of examples. One is just a bizarre incident, and then the other one is a healing incident. So the first, a very quick story, I won't make it long. I was traveling with a friend of mine in Siena, Italy. So this is a guy friend, I'm not gay, but as I was traveling, there was something, I knew that he and I probably are going to this place, and he happened to be, he's a German guy, but he happened to be in Italy. And he said, let's go check this place out. I said, sure. And in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, so why are we going to this place? And I'm going, okay, maybe we had a lifetime together there. We'll find out. Interestingly, I walk into this really ancient church in Siena. And immediately I had a deja vu that I was this little blonde girl with 3 kids. And he and I got married in that church.
Oh, wow.
And so as I was there, I was having these visions, and I had 2 girls and 1 boy, and I was a petite blonde girl, and he was working for the royalty, like doing something with the horses or something, And when I came out, I kind of told him the story. He started cracking up.
Oh, so he didn't believe in any of that?
He knows me.
Okay.
So
to know you is to love you, Sri.
Exactly. And then he was like, okay, whatever he says is fine with me, because I've been
exposed. Why you tried to go with it? Come on, give us a kiss.
Yeah, exactly. So, no, we were cool about that. And then there was another incident, which is a healing incident. So there was this Peace Corps volunteer, and I lived in Tanzania. So she was visiting Tanzania. And every time she went to this island, Zanzibar, where I used to live, she would get there and she hated the place intuitively. She just hated the place. And Zanzibar is this exotic island, on the east coast of Africa. And one morning in Zanzibar, we're having breakfast, and she tells me about this dream. And I looked at the dream, I looked at her life, I said, this is exactly what happened. And I found out, or we found out, that she was a slave girl that was thrown off board by an Arab trader. And I happened to be passing by, and I kind of saved her. And interestingly, when she came to Zanzibar, the entire time she had this cough that was just endless. And as soon as we kind of talked about that, it immediately brought some healing. And immediately after that, the cough disappeared.
Now, is that because the guy threw her off because she probably had pneumonia, it was no good? Or was it because she's aspirated some salt water, some seawater? Did you?
She was almost drowning.
Yeah,
and
okay,
so the cough feeling was of a drowning. You drink in water and you're coughing the water out.
Yeah.
And that's when I saved her. So you see, the point is very interesting, is that memory of us together being in this island and her coughing all the time was reconnecting to that old memory, which is ingrained in our DNA and our soul. And so what happened was, at that point, by acknowledging it and healing it and giving it love, it actually disappeared. So that's one of the things that happens, is when we get certain messages in this lifetime, there's a real reason for it.
Always.
Yes.
Always.
And so what happened, the reason is that it's not just random, or it's just entertaining, like when people say, oh, they're Cleopatra, or, that's random. That's a make-up stuff. But
wait, what is that? Claire what?
Cleopatra. Like everybody.
Oh, Cleopatra. Okay. I thought you saw one of the Claires. Okay, never mind.
Yeah, it's really amazing. It's like the number of women that end up going to talking to psychics, and how many Cleopatras
Oh,
are
I
there around the
know,
world.
I know.
It's
Or
insane.
I'm the twin flame of Prince. You know, I get that a lot.
Exactly.
Or Michael Jackson. That's a lot.
Exactly. Yeah, it's so fun. Anyway, so it was really amazing to see that healing in her, because it was something that was bothering her all her life,
Yeah.
amplified in that little town. So a lot of the times, a lot of the traumas that we have had in past lives actually continue in this life, but we need to bring attention to it. And really, it's just the stuff, you guys talk about all the time, is recognize it. And as you say in medicine, diagnosing the illness is 50% of the cure. And the second part of the cure, the 50%, the remaining part, is actually dealing and resolving it with love.
Yes.
So we have to look at it, we have to acknowledge it, and then we have to actually heal it by love and forgiveness and healing and things like that. So there are many tools. Yeah.
I'm going to ask you a question, but first I want to say to all you guys out there, some of you guys, I mean, you may have been, one of you guys may have been Cleopatra and maybe the twin flame. So I don't want to just say, well, all you guys are crazy, because you're not. Nobody's crazy. We're all perfect. Yeah. Also, I want to ask you if this friend of yours, if she ended up liking Zanzibar or not.
No, but it was okay the next few days. Okay. She's an American gal who was in Peace Corps at that time, and she just came to visit me down, and so she's one of my students now, and but that healing kind of liberated her to move on, because unless we deal with our psychological anchors, the things that hold us back, we cannot grow. And we're going to struggle until we deal with our own issues, whether they're from past lives or this life. So, and they are related, because this incarnation that we have, our present incarnation, actually is based on the investment of our actions from our past lives.
And our future lives too, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And so in order to move ahead with our challenges, or to get over the challenges we have, we need to heal.
Yeah.
So the challenges that we have, the problems that we have in our lives, is to learn. And that's what I said even last time, that we come into this lifetime to learn and heal. And that's how we can move ahead.
All right. Oh, I'm going to read from some questions here. It's on my computer. I didn't print it out because I was busy bleeding from my fingers. How does Source / the universe decide what is good or bad karma on our balance sheet? Can something be perceived as positive karma, but, well, I'll just stop there. Oh, but wait, but actually go on our balance sheet as bad karma? Okay, and then I'll ask.
Okay. First of all, let's get something very, very clear. There is no good karma. There's no bad karma. This is our imposition based on our cultural programming, that we impose what is good or what is bad. Yeah. Okay. Ultimately, the question you have to ask yourself is not what is good or bad karma. The question you have to ask yourself, how do you experience that situation? Do you experience it in a pleasant way, or do you experience it in an unpleasant way? So
what do you do with that information? That's really important. Go ahead.
Exactly, because if it is pleasant, you're going to enjoy it, you're going to be happy, you're going to be comfortable, yes. But you're not going to really grow.
Yeah.
It is the unpleasant situation that makes you uncomfortable where you are. And because of that discomfort, you're going to seek comfort. Okay. And because you're in the situation where it's difficult for you, it's problematic for you, you are going through a difficult time, like I said in the previous videos, the entire purpose of that difficult situation is to actually figure out a way to learn. And the moment you learn it, it disappears.
That's right.
Okay. So there is no bad karma, there's no negative karma, because what you perceive as bad is simply there as a lesson for you. The problem is we don't learn.
You see, some of us are slow learners too.
Exactly. I'm a really slow learner.
No, I don't think so.
Right. So unless we learn, you see, I gave this example before. When a mother tells a child, don't play with fire, I don't listen as a boy. You know, I tend to be rebellious, and I'm curious. These are two deadly things. Okay, as a child, I want to learn. So just because my mother brought attention to the fire, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to stick my finger in there to see whether my finger actually
And that's
burns.
how you learn. Logical consequences, you know?
Absolutely. And that's the entire point of learning. So it's never a bad karma. It's never a good karma. It's our imposition. Because I'll tell you what we perceive here in the West to be good, it's actually bad in other cultures.
I know.
And what we consider good, bad, it's actually good in other cultures. So who is right?
That's true.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, we have to look at ourselves. How do we perceive the situation? Because actually, if you look at the concept of perception, the whole idea of perception is very subjective.
Yeah.
Okay, it's based on the way we grow up. It's based on the culture. It's based on some of the programming that is ingrained with us. Part of it is also something we included in the DNA of our parents, which is again imposed. So to really have an objective view of everything, we need to know to separate our subjective views. But our subjective views are based entirely on our identity and on what's been programmed on us.
And our experiences, past experiences.
And our experiences, exactly. Yeah. So that is the fundamental problem in the world. I mean, the reasons why religions fight is because it's all subjective.
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't mean it's right.
That should be a quote. You need to have like a calendar with all these. That would be a cool quote for January. I don't know.
Thank you.
So we have to learn because everything. There's no good or bad. Everything's just a lesson or a potential lesson, a teachable moment.
Right. Yeah. And by the way, these lessons, just to top up on that, the lessons are there to bring to help us get on track.
Yes.
To get on the purpose why we're here. And on top of it, by the way, we chose that.
I get this image in my mind of us having blindfold on, and we're just fumbling around in the dark, going down this path, and somebody's on one side, some the other, with a little electric cattle prod. Zzz, 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 get in the line. It's kind of like that. But so you said we have to learn. Does that mean we have to just, okay, I figured this out on a intellectual basis, or do you have to also have the experiential component to learning?
The experience is what gives us the wisdom, because it's like this. You can give me a recipe to cook a great pasta, but unless I taste it, I will never, ever know what a good pasta is.
Right.
I'm just using pasta because everybody cooks pasta. But,
yeah. Erik does the same thing, but with the brownies.
Exactly.
Much higher calorie.
Or a brownie. Exactly. Or a brownie. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or a brownie. So the whole point is that it is essential for us to experience things, but we should not fall back to rely on experience as the ultimate way of understanding. The experience is contextualized by our cognitive mindset. So it is our cognition that kind of understands what our experience is all about and contextualizes it in a way that we then use that to grow.
And so we use that to change our choices going forward. Like, say you were betrayed by, I don't know, a family member.
Right.
And you realize, wow, I think this is my way of learning that forgiveness is one of the many facets of love of which I am made, and all is made. So what should I do? Does that mean the person has to find forgiveness, or do they just know that the forgiveness is possibly one of the answers? Do they have to live their lives differently in order to satisfy that lesson?
Right. So that's a beautiful question. And in fact, I'll take it in two ways. Okay. So the first way is that, let's say you're my family member and you've hurt me so much. And by the way, I know about you and your father, and I've had major father issues. So speaking from experience.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say my family member has caused me so much harm. I can be really angry about it. I can hold on to that anger, and that is like an acid in a container.
Oh,
It
yeah.
burns me up.
Oh, I know. I know it does. I know.
Okay. We can carry that into another lifetime if we do not smarten up. And by the way, the same situation repeats itself in the next lifetime.
Ugh, that is no fun, because I have carried that for a long time since childhood. Oh, that processed a lot of it out, but then the final blow that happened toward the end of the life, oh my God, it was horrible. But all of a sudden, I tried to find a different perspective. And I think perspective is so underestimated. It's so powerful. I thought, well, this was a sick man. He was mentally ill. I should instead have compassion for him. It can't have been easy to have been him. So anyway, that helps a little, for the most part.
Right. So perspective. Now look at this, what you just said. Where did you get your perspective way? Not through experience, but through the cognition.
Yeah.
You understood his perspective, and you need the mind for that.
Yeah, that's true.
Because you cannot experience him. You have your own experiences. But you can, through your own perception and cognition, you understand his point of view and begin to appreciate what he went through.
That's right.
Okay. And once you appreciate what he went through, that was the best he could do for two reasons. One, he did that for you, but he also was there as an instrument for your learning. Otherwise, you would not have had this opportunity to forgive him.
That's true.
You would not have had the opportunity to figure out that perception.
Yeah.
Because you'd be contained in your old ways, in your old perception. So the idea of opposition, of conflict, is to allow us to experience the negative so that we can learn how to love through the positive. Okay, so what is the positive? Harm is done, horrible harm is done to you. Okay, how do you learn to forgive this person who you are supposed to worship as the parent? And that's the greatest challenge, is when you can get to a point in the most difficult situation to find forgiveness, to forgive him, and maybe to forgive you because you might have done the same thing to him in another lifetime. We don't know that, right? So we forgive both. You forgive him, you forgive yourself, and then you let go. And in that is where you grow. And you learn the power of forgiveness.
And just feeling gratitude for having been offered that lesson also is extremely powerful. And I think also we need to look at, to help our perspective, is look at the fact that, for example, my father, he's part of the collective. He's made of love. I mean, he's part of source. So, how mad can you get,
Exactly. I mean, I might have told in my previous story that I have had, one person who has ruined my life, about 40 years of my life, was my father. But my father, because he was schizophrenia, but then I had to deal with that. Now, the question is, I was his father. I was a real poor farmer in India. And he was the youngest child I had out of 9, I think. And he was the only child that brought money home. So I let him do whatever he wanted as a father. So I stopped parenting him. What happened was, in the last few years before he passed away, I had to teach him the lessons I did not teach him in the previous life. Okay.
Are you talking about your real father or the father your real father?
So my father, and I was his father. I was my grandfather.
Right.
So as my grandfather, I did not do my job as a parent. Right? So in this lifetime, I had to be born, and I had to teach him as a child, because guess what? If we are not going to learn from our parents, we have the society to teach us a lesson. If we don't learn from the society, our kids will teach us what we do.
Oh, they're the best teachers. Oh, they can be brutally honest though, but you know, you need
Exactly.
that. You really do need that. Oh,
Exactly.
that's fascinating. You want me to go on to the
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, I don't want to wait till the end to share your information because what if people don't get to the end? So I don't want to be in the habit of trying to do it before then. So can you tell us how people can get in touch with you? And
Yes. I'll spell out slowly this time because every time I do it, I tend to do it.
oh, I write it down in a big title thing, and that's okay.
Okay, so they can get to me in two ways. One, they can go to my website, which is svatmananda.org, and I'll spell it out. It's SVATMANANDA.org. Or they can email me directly, which is svatmananda@gmail. So again, it's SVATMANANDA@gmail.com.
And how can somebody become your pupil? And also, what other things do you have to offer?
Okay, so there are a couple of things. One, I teach this is based on Vedanta, which is based on the ancient Indian teaching of oneness.
Mm-hmm.
So what I teach is I teach how you can see the oneness beyond a shadow of doubt. It's one thing to feel the oneness. It's one thing to be told that, oh, we are one. But the problem is, you know, when you are angry at a person, where is that oneness?
Yeah.
If someone does horrible harm to you, are you feeling one with that person?
Mm.
Are you feeling one with Saddam Hussein or Osama bin Laden or the person you hate the most?
Oh, that's so
Can
hard.
you get to that point where you feel oneness with the person that hates you, that you hate the most? That is what I teach actually, is how to overcome that, to see that from a scriptural basis. But I also do the other way, which I'm going to start next year, is actually create a course where we do not need to go all the way down into the scriptures, but for the general public who do not want to get into Sanskrit words and who do not want to get into the Indian scriptures, is one, learn how to love, and secondly, because they're correlated, the second part of that is how do we see the oneness and actually see it beyond a shadow of doubt. So
but also how to live in that knowing of oneness.
Right.
That's
Exactly.
how to march through life, make decisions and choices. You know, that's the tough part.
That's correct. And absolutely, you cannot know this if you do not integrate it as part of your daily life. So it's incredibly transformative for everybody. So you take the values and you learn to transform it. And part of it is actually also a guidance on how you can integrate it into your life. So we take for instance, the forgiveness issue. So the exercise is, how do you find someone that you really hate or someone that has really hurt you and learn to forgive that person? And so so the course that I'm designing, which is for next year really, is how do we get step-by-step process that you work with the situation to get to that point. So I'm kind of looking at that.
Well, so is that in person or is it online? Is it like
I'm going to do it online because it's really hard to get everybody. And then I'll do retreats. By the way, you do retreats too, which I'd like to show up. But
oh my God, yeah, that'd be so fun if you could be like the main host of one of them. It's not really mine. I do it or whatever. I just facilitate because I don't want to make any money on anything. Right. So I just give an avenue for mediums to spread their love, spread a little Erik and yeah, it's going to be fun. I think we should, before I get to the question, we need to do a television show where a medium there could be Erik involved, but if somebody is regressed to past life and maybe in between lives, and then it could be a travel channel thing. Then the film crew and everybody goes to that place. We see where their grave is. We correlate it with church records and talk to the ancestors and stuff like that. Wouldn't it be cool?
Absolutely.
And the medium, awesome. Oh my God.
That would be so awesome, actually. And that would be that would really do well. In fact, I talked to Erik once, and he had suggested that I'd be doing a television show or something
See,
like that.
of course, you'd be a natural in this particular one. I mean, right? Okay.
So
So
maybe
anyway,
this
I'm
is
working on that. I'm
So I
working on
didn't
that.
really figure out how exactly, but
But I mean, we could have little vignettes where you teach some of the stuff, you know, to
right.
the, yeah. Okay. We'll talk about that later. Okay. Let me ask another question. How are we doing on time? Oh boy. Part of the other, another part of this question, can someone feel that they are acting out of love and highest good, but actually accumulate bad karma? Oh, that's a good question.
That is a very good question. The question.
What's your question? Of course it's good, I guess.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
So the thing is that, again, it goes back to perception.
Mm-hmm.
Many times you'll find that in lovers, when somebody says, oh, I'm doing it because I love you, but yet I really, let's say if I'm in a relationship and I really entrap my girlfriend or my wife and I don't let her do anything, but that's because I love her so much.
Oh my God.
That is not quite what we mean by love. So when we talk about love here, when we talk about love in this particular case, because there's a difference between lost love or relationship, significant relationship love, or real love, we still don't know what that difference is, which is actually, I'm kind of writing a book on that. But anyway, the real love is when you're completely selfless, in the sense that you're doing something for that person's benefit, not yours.
Absolutely. You know,
So
there's something really recent that happened to me. This guy, a dear friend of mine, he, you know, I have a personal Facebook page, and sometimes I put political stuff on. It's my right. I mean, you can't take everything away from me, people. And then he just kind of berated me and said, you know, this is not in keeping with the message you're trying to give through Erik. But it's okay because I love you. I tell you this out of love. And I said, so-and-so, this is not solicited advice. This is being judgmental. No, because I'm doing it with love. No.
Right.
If you're telling me I am not, you know, being the person you want me to be, then
That's pure judgment.
Pure judgment. To be non-judgmental, you let people be who they are, and you can't throw the love card and make it all right. It's like in the South, we use bless his little heart. You know, oh, he's so ugly, bless his little heart. It's once you throw in that bless your little heart thing, then everything's okay. All right, so sorry about that.
And this is the thing is when, you know, so that question was kind of loaded, but the preconditioning, the perception of what we think love is, that is the question, not so much how we do it. The question is, do we understand what love is really? And if we can get to the point where I know what love is in the sense that it's not, I have no derived benefit from it, or I've got absolutely nothing to gain, then it can be. In your case, when this guy came out to make that comment, first of all, the question is why? Okay, so you had to do what you had to do for your own reason. You're totally justified for it. But he was projecting his own issues and then using that under the banner of love. So we kind of have to be careful. So the question is, to sum up, did the person ask you for help to begin with? Was it solicited? If it was solicited, then you can do something for that person because it was solicited.
Absolutely.
Right.
Solicited advice, criticism, that's fine. Exactly.
If it was not solicited, then you are in the wrong to do that. To begin with, right there. Of course, there's all buts and ifs and things like that.
Oh, yeah.
But just in branding, if you just take black and white categories, I don't give advice unless it's solicited.
Yeah.
Because
it's like, you know, when it's okay for you to say to your neighbor, hey, I know you're not asking me about what to do with your kid, but he just ran across the street yesterday without looking, and I'm really concerned, etc. Maybe you need to do something like talk to him about it, etc. So yeah, something like that where safety is involved, right?
Exactly. That's sharing information.
Yeah, that's true.
You're not making a judgmental call. You see,
Okay.
the problem in America right now, and I'm being very general, it's very unusual for me to make real broad statements.
Hmm.
But the problem is, most Americans have grown up in the past to be nice, do not talk about politics, do not talk about religion. So when you go to a party, you just talk about the weather and,
Mm.
let's party kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I'm being I'm sorry. But the point is, we did not mature as a culture to talk about stuff.
Yeah.
If you
And
go to
deal with
foreign countries,
conflict. Yeah. Deal
yeah,
with differences.
exactly.
Yeah. Agree to disagree. It's okay. We don't have to. Um,
Defriend you.
yeah. Yeah. Exactly. It's okay.
So if you go to foreign cultures, as kids, we talk about politics.
Mm.
We learn to share, to not agree on things, and to accept each other's views. And we know we're still friends,
Yeah.
And this is something that's very mature about other cultures. But here we've been
It's
trained.
not. Oh my God. It's so horrible now.
Yeah. And so
Oh.
what happens is if you are a Democrat, you're a problem, or if you're a Republican, you're a problem. If you
Mm.
like Trump, you're a problem. I mean,
Yeah.
it's really bizarre that we can't have the courage to talk to each other because you said something that I didn't like.
Yeah, because you know what?
Exactly.
Guess what? There are kernels of truth on either side. I can promise you
Exactly.
that.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay, well, let me see what we got here. Why is the universe so interested in training billions of beings to be loving? Is there a different universe that is training all of its beings to be hateful? What does the universe get again by training a bunch of souls to be loving? Ooh, cool.
Yes. Actually, because we are all one, we are experiencing love through the very fact, through the beings that live love.
Yeah.
I mean, I can go on about that, but I'll just end it there.
Wow, that's too powerful. You don't need to embellish it at all.
Right.
Wow. And also source is love. We are
Right.
all whole and part of source, and source wants to understand itself, not just based on the conception of a pasta recipe, but to experientially tasting the pasta.
Right. So
Oh God, now I'm hungry.
for a quick example, like I know what love is, but I want to experience love. Why?
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
it's a good thing, right?
yeah.
The source wants to do that. It understands love, it knows love, but it also wants to experience love, that its creation should be love.
Exactly. Okay, let's see. There's one last one. Something unrelated. I have been seeking the answer to this question for a while. I wonder if this is a viewer. Okay. Somewhat unrelated. I've been seeking the answer to this question for a while now. Why is numerology based on 1 through 9? Why not 1 through 23 or any other number? Why did the universe decide on 1 through 9? I know numbers have different energies. And by the way, Erik, it was very difficult Saturday because, I was very keenly aware of 12:41 p.m. because that's when he pulled the trigger.
Yeah.
And all that adds up to 8, which is the symbol from what I read about rebirth and new beginnings.
Transformation, correct.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is sort of the lost occult wisdom that today I still don't believe we know it fully. I know a lot of people are practicing numerology based on the 0 to 9, but basically there are 9 energies, okay, including a 0, which has no energy.
Wait, you mean, okay, so there really are, or can there be an energy to 1.3? Or, I mean, is it not an infinite, infinite within?
Yeah, it's for instance, like the whole difference between day and night. There's
Oh.
like a sort of like a transition point. So when we look at, for instance, even in astrology, you have different signs. Where do you draw the line exactly? That 30 degree it's not really, doesn't really exist in the sky. It's something that we projected. Okay.
I
But
see.
if you go back to the ancient times, the Greeks had this information, and also the Indians, where the numbering system actually came from India, from the Vedic times. So if you really go back to the ancient Indian knowledge, you will see that these numbers actually were just not numbers. They were like energy vibrations, like on a broad scale. Just like, for instance, if you look at white light, there's 7 rays, 7 colors. Okay, so where do you distinguish one color from the other in those?
Yeah.
So it's exactly the same thing. So you have actually, if you look at the white light, just a regular white light, if you pass it through a prism, you get 7 colors that we can identify and see, but then there are 2 other colors that we don't see. Guess what? In the astrological system, that's exactly what we have. In India, we use the 7 key planets and the 2 nodes. Okay, so we don't use outer planets very much in the Indian context because it takes a broad scale. So it doesn't mean that they did not know about it, but for practical purposes, it was not very useful because it influenced a whole generation. So you see the correlation between the light prisms, the different colors. And so this is how the colors are connected to the chakras. They're also connected to the numbering system, and they're also connected to our days, weekdays, by the way. We have 7 for the same reason.
But I can't remember. There are 7 main chakras, right? Are there?
Yeah, there's 7 chakras.
What is and I'm told that every 7 years we very often change a chapter in our life. And I've seen that. Actually, I have experienced that.
That's correct.
What is the deal about the number 7?
So
lucky too.
Yeah, and the number 7 is what we call a spiritual number. It has an energy of spirituality. So, and I don't know much about numerology. It's just that to me it was useful, but again, I got more into something more deeper and more sophisticated, which is kind of what I went to. But all of the numbers have beautiful transitions. So you see what happens is number 7 is about love. And once we figure this love, then we transform. So what happens is every relationship goes through a 7-year cycle, and this is based on astrology also. So you'll find that every relationship, they're in their honeymoon period, the first 3 years. The 4th and 5th year is a bit of a transition. The 6th and 7th is a struggle. But if they make it through the 7th year, then they start a new cycle again. Unfortunately, in the US or in the Western world, we give up as soon as we hit the 3rd year or the 4th year. It's like, okay, time for divorce. But if we actually hung in there, we would actually learn our lessons and then go on to the next lesson.
That's true. So does each number have its own megahertz of frequency actually?
Yes, we can say that in a simplistic sense, but there's something called the Enneagram, which also talks about people's personalities, and it's really complex. Okay, so you cannot just simply box people into 9 categories, because there are also subcategories which influence the 9 categories, the 9 numbers.
Yeah.
Okay, so you can look at a person and say, okay, this is a type 8 person. Now, Enneagram, which was developed by a German guy much later, I think in the 18th century or 17th, I can't quite remember. But he came up with a system which is actually quite brilliant. And he uses the similar concepts that the Indians had about the numbers. Because numbers are just not numbers. They're symbols of certain archetypes, certain energy types.
Yeah.
And how you weave them into each other, and depending on the subcategories and other influences, this is how you can see a person. Now, again, by the way, you see a cross-reference to that in astrology too. So we see that in our colors. For instance, the screen that we are looking at, all these colors on our screen is based on 3 colors only.
Yeah.
Red, green, and blue.
Yeah.
Right? And these 3 colors gives us over 1 billion colors, over 1 million colors at least.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Right? That we see on our computer screen. It's based purely on 3. Now imagine if you take the permutation of 7, what that is, So it's pretty complex, yeah.
Oh, wow. All right, so is that the German guy, is that the Enneagram, does that have anything to do with the Myers-Briggs? I used to call it Briggs and Stratton, but I forgot that's a lawnmower or engine or something like that. But where you're ESTJ and
I know.
Yeah.
It's quite similar, but people can kind of misuse it because basically it tells you what your main key archetype is based on a number, on numerology.
Yeah.
And then there are subcategories. So the thing is, when you have fear, you fall back into another number. And when you are happy or something, you move into another number.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. So it's
Yeah.
not sealed in concrete.
No. But basically, you can tell. You can, if you know. I don't know much about it, but basically, what a little I know is that I can tell if I look at a person what number they are and where their fallback is. So basically, every number. Let's just very briefly. Every number has a specific type of person, right? But then the one category is that they're all divided into preservation, self-preservation. And self-preservation basically falls into, you'll find that a lot of people will fall into eating a lot of food because it preserves them, or it is sexual.
Yeah.
So just like, for instance, some people are hungry, but they can survive. They don't have an issue. They just go on with their work. Some people, when they get hungry, they really can't think and can't do anything until they eat.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
So you'll find that some people have that sexual energy too. So it depends how it falls. The second part is experiential. So some people, like for instance, who are like me, we tend to travel a lot. That's because we are constantly experiencing something, and we experience the world. And usually, these are the number 7s, for instance. And we have a hard time making a decision when we have multiple choices because we want to experience everything.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. So you're a number 7.
I'm a number 7, yes.
What do you think I am?
I don't know. Well, we just met over the Zoom.
Oh,
so
yeah. Well, we will. Eventually, you will tell me what a number is.
I can tell you what the number is, yeah.
I have one more thing to say. You do offer very in-depth Indian, astrology readings. So you guys need to check out his site for that. I mean, I think everybody should do it to know where they are in their life, where they're going, just to understand everything involved in their human experience and their spiritual experience.
Right.
And,
it provides like a roadmap to.
It's a roadmap, yeah, right. Without the cattle prods. Last question: can we reincarnate into anything, like an insect, a rock?
No.
Okay.
No. Because we have evolved. Now, science always goes in alignment with what we know.
Okay.
So there's no contradiction in terms of what we know versus science. We say, or I say as a scientist, that science hasn't caught up to what we know.
Okay.
All right. So we can, because we have evolved from an amoeba, which is a single cell, to a mammal, we can reincarnate as another mammal. That would be a dog or a cat, but we cannot go beyond that because we have surpassed that limit.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
This is wonderful. I can't wait to post it.
I know. It's such a pleasure again connecting with you again.
Oh, it's so much fun. I just love you. I'm going to go dig. I want to get my surgical equipment out and
take care of that.
My finger. Right. I'm tough. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, and talk to you soon.
So TV show. That's going to be awesome.
TV show. Let's do it.
Hell yeah. Bye.